All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to come back today. I've been talking all week about being human or speaking human or bringing humanity into a technology driven world. I've been talking all week about that. Last week, I talked all week about emotional intelligence. So if you're just seeing me for the first time, if you're running across this for the first time, you might say, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? So let me give you a little bit of background. Catherine McPhail, hello. Hi. How are you? My name is Jeff Eccles. I'm the president and chief strategy officer of Echo Engagement. I'm also the director of brand strategy for EntreArchitect, which gives me the opportunity to host a show every weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern called Context and Clarity. Catherine McPhail, who you see there in the comments right out of the gate, is my co-host on Thursdays, and we have a special guest every Thursday afternoon. Thanks for dropping in, which is a good reminder. If you're out there somewhere, if anybody else is out there, say hi. Let us know that you're here and let us know where you are and let us know what you do. The Context and Clarity show that I host and that Catherine and I host on Thursdays, it's for an EntreArchitect audience. And you might guess, based on that name, that many of the people in that audience are architects. But it struck me 2 weeks ago, especially when we started planning and talking about the topic, the theme of emotional intelligence, that these topics that we cover, these topics that we talk about every single day are not just for architects. They're for all of us. All of us need to talk about emotional intelligence for our businesses, for our lives, for our relationships. All of us need to talk about speaking human in a technology-driven world, bringing humanity into a technology-driven world. It doesn't matter if you're an architect or an engineer or an accountant or an attorney or a doctor or a real estate agent or some creative or design professional or a construction professional. All of these things that we've been talking about are completely applicable to whoever you are and whatever you do. So that's why I'm coming here for just a few minutes at 2 p.m. Eastern every day, is to take that context and clarity topic and bring it into a wider audience. I know that because many of you will see this on LinkedIn. You may see this on YouTube. You may see this on Twitch, but many of you, especially if you're on LinkedIn, because you're in my network on LinkedIn, you're probably in professional services somewhere. And I think these topics are as important to you as they are to the EntreArchitect community. And so I wanted to just have these conversations, if we can, weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Now, I also want to say, before we get too deep into this, I am not coming to these conversations as an expert. I'm not an expert on emotional intelligence. I'm not an expert on humanity, human connections, anything like that. I am simply here to facilitate a conversation. So if you are an expert, bring your expertise, add your 2 cents. If you have questions or if you have advice, share it. That's why we're here. We're here for a conversation. I'm going to keep this really short. So time is of the essence. However, if you're seeing this on the replay version, which the great thing about LinkedIn Live, the great thing about YouTube Live, the great thing about Twitch is that the recording of these sessions will stay here and you can continue to ask questions or comment on these feeds, on these recordings into the future. So what I ask is, if you're watching the recording, just use the hashtag replay. Just say hashtag replay. I'm here. This is my name. This is where I am. This is what I do. This is my question. This is my advice. This is what I think about that topic. So those are sort of the ground rules. But again, all of these things start with a conversation called Context and Clarity. It is a live stream every weekday at 4 p.m. Eastern. It is a podcast that comes out early every weekday morning. It is a coffee conversation that happens within the Clubhouse app. There's a Context and Clarity Club, and every weekday morning, I host a 30-minute CNC coffee talk. And so we have these conversations in a lot of different forums, in a lot of different formats every single day. And we've been, like I said, we've been talking about um, humanity, being human, bringing humanity into a technology-driven world all week this week. Yesterday, Catherine and I hosted as our special guest Brian Creamer. If you're a marketing or advertising person, you know who Brian Creamer is. If you're not, just Google him. Go to briancreamer.com. That's Brian with an A and Creamer with a K. So BRYANKRAMER, briancreamer.com. He's a prolific speaker, a TED speaker, a great keynote speaker. He's an author. He's credited with sparking the human to human movement. So whatever social platform you're on, search the hashtag human to human, and you're going to find out a lot about Brian Creamer. We talked to Brian yesterday about speaking human and relating to people and sharing with people on a human level. One of the things that we didn't get to in that conversation was talking about posting on social media, which is a big part of where we are, right? We're on LinkedIn or we're on YouTube or we're on Twitch right now. You might be on Clubhouse or Facebook or Instagram or somewhere else, TikTok, Snapchat. I don't know where you are. You're probably a lot of places. We didn't get to that part of the conversation with Brian yesterday, but he speaks on this topic quite often. And the thing that I wanted to share today, under the umbrella, under the title of what should you post on social media, I wanted to share an example that Brian has shared in the past. So I'll try to recreate this as best I can. So Brian, if you're watching this, forgive me if I completely botch this, but I think I can come close to repeating an example that Brian has shared in the past. He said that if you post an article, let's say from The Economist, if you post an article from The Economist every day on LinkedIn, many of you are going to see this on LinkedIn. So if you post an article from The Economist on LinkedIn every day, the people, and that's all that you post. So again, one article from The Economist every day on LinkedIn, and that's all you post. Then the people that see that are going to see that and they're going to draw their own conclusions. And it's very one-dimensional, right? Okay, so Jeff posts these articles every day. So from that, I'm going to infer that Jeff subscribes to The Economist, cares about the economy, economic things, maybe has certain political beliefs, and whatever else might be connected to articles, your image, your imagination, your perception of what articles from The Economist mean. It's going to be up to the person seeing that one article every day that I'm posting from The Economist. And by the way, I've never posted an article from The Economist in my life, but there's that. But Brian goes on to talk about this idea of the rule of thirds. Now he's taking that and he identifies this. He takes it from photography and painting and other visual arts mediums where the rule of thirds is a proportioning. It's an organizing technique. So basically, think of a canvas and you divide it into thirds. Brian says, what if your social media was divided into rule of thirds? And what if you posted one article from The Economist and one thing about a cause that you care about and one thing that you did with your family? And over and over and over, you use that rule of thirds and you post in that way. If you do that, then suddenly there's a more three-dimensional view of you. Okay, I see that Jeff posted about The Economist, and he posted about the Boys and Girls Club, and he posted this thing about a ball game that he and his family went to. Now, all of a sudden, they're still going to make their own assumptions. They're still going to make a leap, right, and interpret those things. But now they have a more three-dimensional view of who I am, what I care about, what I'm involved in, and what matters to me. The important takeaway from that, I think, is that if you are a professional and someone is out there, if your goal on social media is to connect with clients or people to collaborate with, or to build a network or something like that, if that's your goal and you're on social media, then every single person that's out there viewing that fits into that goal is looking for the right fit, right? They're looking for the doctor that feels right, like the right fit, the attorney that feels like the right fit, the architect that feels like the right fit. The best way for them to get a feel for you and your personality and what you care about and whether or not you're a right fit is to give them that three-dimensional view. So that was the thing that I wanted to share from conversations with Brian, um, about what you should be posting on social media. So take whatever you want to from that. What do you think about that example? What questions do you have about that? Catherine says, I was thinking about this, and if you were interested in reinventing yourself, this would be an interesting exercise. Absolutely. How quickly could you change other people's perceptions of you by taking this sort of approach? Catherine says, Catherine asks, does it mean that you should pick three areas and try to paint a picture with those three angles? Yeah, I think it does in a way. And I don't think you would need to. I think the example, it's a great tie-in, right, to the rule of thirds. I think that's just an analogy. What if it was six, right? I think you've got to sort of keep it in a box in order to manage it all. But if you're going to create a strategy, and people in the business would call it a content strategy, what are your three things or your five things, whatever they are, and how do you fill each one? I used to use, when I did social media consulting, I would talk about buckets, and we would have 5 buckets basically. What are the 5 buckets? And what are you going to fill those with? So in one bucket, you've got the economist, and one it's causes you care about, and one it's hyper local things, and one it's personal things, and one it's your work, it's your professional thing. So those are your 5 buckets maybe, but you get to pick how many buckets you have and what the label on the bucket is and what you put into the bucket with that particular label. Catherine says, I'm trying to think about the thirds I already post about. Yeah, and I think so. I think that's a good effort as well, right? Can you take that rule and basically deconstruct what you've been doing, right? Can you take that rule and figure out, okay, how does this apply to what I've been doing, and then adjust from there? And for anybody that this is a new concept for, what I would suggest, what I would recommend is maybe start with 3 buckets or start with a rule of thirds. If you have a better handle on this, sure, you could expand that to something more. But in terms of developing a content strategy that's going to make you more human to those people that you're trying to reach, I think this is an excellent idea. I think what Brian is talking about is fantastic, because it really does bring your humanity into into a strategy for connecting with people. I'm going to share something with you if I can find it here real quickly. This is off the top of my head, because somebody sent me a DM earlier, and I don't want to show you. I'm not going to show you whose account this is, but they sent me a DM, unsolicited DM on Instagram earlier today, and so I looked them up, and basically I'm sure it was someone, a lead generation company driving this for this particular, it's an architecture firm. I'll tell you that much. And it was something like, hey, take a look at this account and follow it if you like it, or something like that. And so I looked at it. You can see what all is there. It's pretty pictures of projects, right? Great work. I guess if that's all, if all of those images are from their work, great work, right? But how sterile is that? How much does that lack any personality, or how much does that lack any humanity to it? And so I think, if this is yours, if you recognize this, my advice to you is it's a beautifully curated grid there, but it tells me nothing about you. It doesn't give me any idea of whether or not you're the right fit for me if I'm looking to hire an architect in your area, wherever you are. It doesn't show me any of your humanity. And the thing is, no one's trying to hire a curated image of anything. Everyone's trying to hire, if they're trying to hire a professional, they're trying to find a professional that feels like the right fit. And so that's a word of warning. Anyway, hi, Anna. Thanks for joining us. How do you manage this transition of branding and social media? All right, that's an interesting question. Hi, Stephen. It's interesting. Rule of thirds, not to pick on LinkedIn, but personal posts often start with, sorry, I've got to switch over here. I know this isn't Facebook, but yeah, that's always a word of warning, isn't it? I know this isn't Facebook, but, and I think that brings out a good point as well. Each one of these platforms has its own ecosystem, its own language, its own purpose. So you need to, if you're going to be on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Instagram, on whatever, you need to understand why you're there and what you're trying to accomplish there, who you're trying to reach there, or whatever. And think about it. What do the people on this platform want to, what's relevant to them? What's going to connect with them? Anna asks, I want to go back to Anna's question here in a minute. Catherine says, I assume we're talking about professional social media, or does that extend to the personal as well? Everything I post is public everywhere. I think that's a choice that you need to make. I think if you say you're a sole practitioner as an architect or an attorney or whatever, then I think the lines are really, really blurred, right? If you're a sole practitioner, it's really blurry. The question is, do you have a personal Instagram account and a professional Instagram account? That's going to be a judgment call. If you're on your personal account, you're really into posting about politics and religion, you might make a value decision whether or not you want that to enter into your professional life. Now, I'm gonna tell one quick story as we close up here in just a few minutes about that. But it's a value judgment. If you're a larger organization, I think it becomes clear cut that, the business is the business, and hey, maybe everybody in the organization has their own personal, and then how much crossover is there between that? But I think it depends on how small or how large your organization is. Going to Anna's question, how do you manage this transition by branding in social media? The first thing I would say, and we're going to get into this next week actually in our topics. The first thing I would say is you just start, right? Figure out where you are today, what you need to accomplish, and start working in that direction. So if there's no rhyme or reason to what you're doing today, add some rhyme or reason to it today. Think of the rule of thirds, think of the 3 buckets, and from here on out, start filling up those 3 buckets. But start with, this is what I want to accomplish. That's your first step. What do I want to accomplish? Who do I want to connect with? And what's relevant to those people that I'm trying to connect with? That's the best advice I've got right there. Javier, hi Javier. Javier says, I found that as soon as I started to put myself in front of the camera, being myself, people had a different reaction to my work, and the outreach was more relatable. Still learning with every post. Yeah. And so here's a personal example I want to share. I didn't think about this at the beginning, but I'm fascinated by TikTok. I love TikTok. I have not hit my stride or found my voice on TikTok yet. Just haven't figured it out yet. And honestly, I haven't posted much on TikTok lately because, hey, life. There's a lot going on, a lot of balls in the air right now. So I will get back to TikTok soon and back to posting on TikTok soon. But, like Javier said, he says, I found that as soon as I started putting myself in front of the camera, implying that he wasn't in front of the camera prior, right? He learned something there. He learned that when he started being more relatable, when he started being more human, when he got in front of the camera, it was more relatable to people and people were reaching out. And he's still learning with every post. That's where I am still on TikTok. Okay. I'm still trying to figure out what's the best way for me to relate to people, because that's the key. It's social media for a reason, right? When we're posting on social media, it is about being social. It is about relating to other people. So what do I want to accomplish? who do I want to connect with, and what is the most relevant, what's the most engaging for those people that I'm trying to relate to and connect with. How do I connect with? How do I be human to those people? That is, I think that's the best thing that I can tell you. And it doesn't matter which platform we're talking about, any platform, right? And back to Stephen's earlier question or point earlier about LinkedIn versus Facebook, learn the ecosystem, right? There can certainly be some crossover, but if you think about specifically to what Stephen said, if you think about stereotypically what is posted on Facebook, most people feel there's not much room for that on LinkedIn. So if you're gonna spout off about politics, LinkedIn's probably not the place. If you're gonna spout off about religion, and I don't mean to say that in a derogatory way, but if you're going to talk about religion, LinkedIn's probably not the place, unless maybe you're a pastor or something like that. That might be your niche, right? But learn the ecosystems and what people talk about and where. I told you I was going to tell you a story, and I'll get to that in just a minute. Again, if you're just joining this, if you haven't said hi yet, say hi. Let us know that you're here. Let us know where you are, and let us know what you do. It's great to have friends that I recognize on the screen right now, but I know since we're broadcasting to LinkedIn and YouTube and to Twitch, there are some of you out there that are listening or watching that I don't know, that we've never met before. My name is Jeff Eccles. I'm the president and the chief strategy officer of Echo Engagement, and also the director of brand strategy at EntreArchitect. The reason I decided to start doing these live streams here on LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitch at 2 p.m. Eastern is that I've been hosting a show since April of last year called Context and Clarity. On Thursdays, Catherine, who you see with the red background there, is my co-host, and we simulcast to Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitch. We have a special guest every week. Every Thursday. Yesterday, our special guest was Brian Kramer. Great conversation with Brian about speaking human in a technology-driven world, about being human, about connecting as a human. It's a great crossover from last week where we talked all about emotional intelligence last week. And so last week I decided, you know what? We have all of these conversations in Context and Clarity on Facebook and on in the podcast and on Clubhouse and all of these places. And most of those are directed towards architects. But these topics that we talk about are not architect topics. They're not architecture topics. They're all of us topics. And so that's why I launched the beginning of last week these conversations here at 2 p.m. Eastern to see if we can reach a wider audience, to see if we can connect with people that are beyond just the architecture world. Put that just in quotes, but I know that these topics are important to all of us. They will help all of us be better business people. They'll help all of us do better work. They'll help all of us be better human beings. So that's why I started this. And we'll see how far it goes. We'll see if it gains any traction at all. It takes a long time. Like I said, I've been doing Context and Clarity since the beginning of April of 2020. So there's been 300 of those conversations now when we combine the live stream, the Clubhouse, the podcast, everything else. So all that being said, we're here today talking about being human on social media, essentially. So I wanted to close this out today because I've got to jump off and get into another meeting here. But I wanted to close this out today with the story of a friend of mine. And I'm not going to tell you his name or anything like that because I didn't clear it with him first. But somebody on Clubhouse brought up a really similar story. And I wanted to share this about my friend. A number of years ago, this is a longtime friend of mine, probably 15 or 20 years we've been friends. Maybe 10 years ago, he started his real estate career. And this is someone that has always worn his emotions, worn his beliefs, worn the things that he cares about on his sleeve in his personal social media. And when he started his real estate career, he just kept going in that way. A lot of people are like, hey, you're a professional real estate agent now. You need to, be really professional and wear a suit and talk only about real estate and all this typical advice for real estate agents. And so he and I were talking one time. I was already doing social media consulting at that point. And, my 2 cents for whatever it was worth was, listen, you can do that. You can wear the suit, you can do the things like all the other realtors do, but the point is you'll be just like all the other realtors. And that's fine if that's what you want to do. That is the most common advice you'll ever get. However, if you do that, you're going to spend a lot of time qualifying, disqualifying leads. Is this the right client for me or is it not? As a realtor or as an architect or as a whatever, you do not want every single client. You're not right for every client out there. Every client out there is not right for you. So you need to be qualifying and disqualifying leads. So that my 2 cents was, the more you talk about these things, the more courage you have to talk about these things, the more people you're going to push away. However, the people that remain are most likely going to be the people that you really want to work with, that believe the way that you do, that care about the things that you care about, and will probably fall into what you would categorize as your ideal client. And I'm not saying it was because of me that he did what he did. This is just a conversation that we had over coffee one morning. And so what he did was he continued to be himself. He continued posting about politics and religion and all the things that he cares about and all of those things. And did he drive people away? Absolutely. He drove people away. Lots of people landed on his social media, especially in the beginning, and said, "What are you doing? There's no way that I will ever work with you because of what you just posted." And he said, "Good, because this is what I believe, and I want to work with people that I believe in." And very quickly, he started attracting the people that believed like he did, that cared like he did, or cared about what he did, and listened to the same music that he, all of those things. And so very quickly, he became the real estate agent to go to if you believed this, if you had this view, if you loved this, if you supported this, if you cared about that. Eventually, he opened his own agency, and to this, I think he still holds the record to date. And I said this morning in Clubhouse, I don't like using this as a metric. Some people love it. I know this is not a metric that he would use, but he, to this date, I believe he's still credited with selling as a real estate agent, selling the most expensive, highest valued property ever in his market, where we are here. I think it worked out okay, right? So that's my advice on being human. Catherine says, if we aren't ourselves, we will get caught at some point being fake. Way worse than being yourself, in my opinion. I think that's an excellent point, right? You've got to be you. You've got to be authentic. Authentic's a buzzword, but there is a lot of power and a lot of truth to that. We talked about that with Brian Kramer yesterday. Right? If we're being human, we're being ourselves. He said you have to speak from your heart, right? Stop speaking from your head, speak with from your heart. If you didn't see that conversation yesterday, there's 2 things that you can do. First of all, since many of you, at least I think everybody that's commented, is on LinkedIn, that means we're probably connected. So go click on my profile, go to my post, and you'll find the live feed from yesterday. Just scroll down a little bit. You'll find the live feed. Catherine and I, who you see on the screen with the red background, Catherine and I talked to Brian Kramer yesterday. Watch that video. If you're more mobile, if you need to be more mobile, Monday afternoon at noon, the podcast version, so the audio version of what we did yesterday, will come out as the Context and Clarity podcast. So go find Context and Clarity wherever you consume podcasts. And Monday at noon Eastern, I think it is, that podcast will roll out. listen to it in the form of a podcast, but listen to that. Brian talked about speaking from the heart, and he took me to task at one point during that conversation yesterday because I made up this example. I thought that was one of the best parts of the conversation because I made up an example that I thought was fairly realistic, and he poked holes all in it. He said, you know what? You need to think about this way. You need to do this. You need to. And so it was a great role playing. It was a great exercise, I thought. So I really appreciate Brian doing that with me. It was completely off the cuff and unintended, but I really appreciate him doing that with us. Javier says, speak from the heart. Yeah, absolutely. If we're going to be real, again, as a professional, people are looking for someone that's going to be the right fit. How are they going to find that if you're not being real, right? If you're not speaking from the heart, how are you going to be real? Catherine says, one of my favorite quotes from yesterday, I think, you're going to be too much for some people. Those aren't your people. Absolutely. That's mine. I don't care what you do. If you're seeing this from wherever, Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn, if you're seeing this live right now, if you're seeing this in the replay version later, I said earlier, I think that's the best advice that I can give you. The very best advice that I can give you is that you need to figure out who you are for. You need to figure out who you're for, who your ideal client is, who your ideal customer is, who your ideal whatever is, and stand for those people and work for those people and be real for those people. And don't worry about anybody else, because you can't be everything for everyone. If you try to be that, real similar to what Catherine is saying there, if you try to be everything to everyone, you will be nothing to everyone, to anyone. You can't be for everyone. So figure out who you're for and connect with those people and be real for those people. Right before we wrap it up here, Michelle. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for joining us. Michelle says, I'm a lot for many people. The ones that keep up with me are the ones I perform best with on high impact projects. That's a great example, right? If you are too much for some people, they're going to fall behind. They're going to fall off. If you're too much for some people and your goal is to make high impact for other people, perfect, right? Keep going. Keep being too much, because only the high impact people will follow you. And that's the point, right? That's the point. Figure out who you're for, what you're for. I don't know, think of it as a crusade or whatever, however you need to frame that in your mind. Figure out who you're for and be everything for just those people. That's the best advice I can give you, period. That's it. I can't do any better than that. Sorry. So with that, I need to wrap this up, and I'm already late for a meeting that I was supposed to be to about 5 minutes ago. So thank you. Thank you, all of you that showed up today. Thank you for all of your comments and your examples. It's great. Thank you for this conversation. Again, my name is Jeff Eccles. I'm here to facilitate conversations. I'm not here to be the expert. I'm the president and CSO of Echo Engagement. You see that there on the screen, pretty easy to figure out. I'm also the director of brand strategy at Entree Architect, which gives me the opportunity to host Context and Clarity Live once a week. That's with Catherine that you see on the screen there in the red background there. And we started Context and Clarity almost a year ago, April 6th, I think. We started Context and Clarity. That means 300 episodes, if you count the live streams every weekday, the clubhouses every weekday, the podcast that comes out every weekday morning, 300 episodes, 300 conversations about the things that matter most. No matter what your context is, finding clarity on the things that matter most. So thank you to all of you. I hope you will have a great weekend. I hope you'll think about this conversation a little bit. Think about who you're for. Who brings you energy is another way to think about that. And who do you give energy to? Think about that this weekend. Take a little bit of time to think about that and relax a little bit, get rejuvenated, take care of yourself and take care of those that are closest to you. and let's do it again Monday. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday.